We light the first candle to recognize Buddhism. Chaos is inherent in all compounded things. Strive on with diligence. We light the second candle to recognize Judaism. The truth is that love is the ultimate and highest goal to which man can aspire. Then I grasp the meaning of the greatest secret that human poetry and human thought and belief have to impart. The salvation of man is through love and in love. We light the third candle to recognize Islam. There is no creature on or within the earth or bird that flies with its wings except that they are communities like you. We light the fourth candle to recognize Taoism. Human consciousness has not adjusted itself to a relational and integrated view of nature. We must see that consciousness is neither an isolated soul nor the mere function of a single nervous system, but of the totality of the interrelated stars and galaxies that makes a nervous system possible. We light the fifth candle to recognize Christianity. Open your mouth for the mute, for the rights of all the needy. We light the sixth candle to recognize Sikhism. As all creation has the same origin and end, humans must have consciousness of their place in the creation and their relationship to the rest of creation. We light the final candle to recognize Native American spirituality. Perhaps you have noticed that even the slightest breeze, you can hear the voice of the cotton tree. This, we understand, is its prayer to the Great Spirit. For not only men, but all things and all beings pray to him continually in different ways. This month's theme, which is June, is Protect the Vulnerable, and creating meaningful conversations. Today's reading comes from Margaret Wheatley. Nothing has given me more hope recently than to observe how simple conversations give birth to actions that can change lives and restore our faith in the future. There is no more powerful way to initiate significant social change than to start a conversation. When a group of people discover that they share a common concern, that's when the process of change begins. If you will, go into the silence with me for a moment. Centered right here, right now, in this wonderful, auspicious moment. This moment in the field of love. This moment in the field of peace. This moment where we are joined together in a consciousness of wholeness. I'm knowing right here and right now for this service that we are truly blessed, that we are truly centered in this wholeness and this oneness and in this community. I know that each and every person here is blessed. I'm knowing that our children are being blessed as they have their time in the back with Mark. I'm knowing that the Higher Mind Band is blessed. I'm knowing that everyone who has attended here is blessed. I'm knowing everyone who is participating in this service is blessed. I'm knowing that Reverend Cece is blessed. That the infinite mind of God, the infinite word of God, is moving in and through and as Reverend Cece. I know that she is divinely inspired and motivated. I'm knowing the words that are spoken here are the words of healing and of truth. And I say, thank you. And so it is.
So it is.
So happy Father's Day. Happy Father's Day. Today we celebrate that masculine energy of creating and playing and doing as it shows up as our dads, right? I came across this quote the other day that I thought was so beautiful I wanted to share it with you. It said, "Dads are ordinary men, turned by love into heroes, adventurers, storytellers, and singers of song." I love that. I think it's so beautiful. That's real masculine energy, healthy masculine energy, creating and adventuring and playing and singing and telling stories and being the hero. So all you men today, celebrate that masculine energy in yourselves. And women too, we have to honor and celebrate that energy within ourselves because it's what gets things done, right? We express our masculine energy in our doing. And we try, of course, to balance that with the feminine energy of being. And so when we can create that balance between doing and being, that's when we find that grounded place of wholeness and recognize that it contains being and doing. I had a colleague the other day who pointed out that we are centers for spiritual living, not centers for spiritual thinking or centers for spiritual studying, but centers for spiritual living, which means we live the principles that we teach that are timeless in everything that we do. We're here to be the presence of the One and to do the work of the One and to bring the fruit of that work into the world. And so this whole year, the group from home office chose the theme of spiritual activism, which means, I think, bringing the fruit of our work as the divine into the world. The spiritual activism we're talking about involves doing and being. It's the masculine energy of creativity and innovation and the feminine energy of introspection and nurturing and evolution. Both are necessary, right? I think social activism without spirituality just turns into anger, reactivity, and spirituality without activism turns into self-obsession and magical thinking. It's the balance of the two, the masculine and the feminine, the creating and the nurturing, that gives us the place to stand where we can feel whole. And social activism, in my mind, is simply spiritual living. It is seeking always to do and say and think that which supports life in all its forms. It may show up as writing letters or voting or marching or donating or simply opening our hearts and minds up to those who aren't like us, which is one of the really hard things to do. It is. So this month's topic is protecting the vulnerable. In our philosophy, what that means is once people's basic needs are met, we seek to empower them. We seek to let them know a different view of themselves that will help them be empowered to do what they need to do. And the team lead for this month is Dr. David Alt, who just left the Center for Spiritual Living Atlanta in order to work more on his foundation. And his foundation is one of those beautiful marriages of masculine and feminine, spiritual and activism, inner and outer. What the foundation does is it empowers people by educating children in the poorest places of Cambodia and Central and South America. They provide for the basic needs, food and clothing, and then they educate, which is absolute empowerment, isn't it? Once you start educating, especially girls, but once you start educating children, you change everything. You change everything. And so Dr. David chose a book this month by Terry Patton, which is called A New Republic of the Heart. It is a sweeping book about merging masculine activity and feminine nurturing and understanding the viewpoints of those who don't think like we do, of the innovator, of the ecologist, of the evolutionary, of all of that all at once, and coming to terms in some way with the complexity of life that's happening right now, and the necessity of being able to open our minds up to that complexity and still not lose that sense of wholeness and that sense of oneness. Here's the quote, one of my favorite quotes from the book. He says, Terry Patton says, "Ultimate empowerment is fueling and strengthening another's ability to trust in an ever-existing intelligence. The distinction between constantly seeking and solidly recognizing is the distinction between presuming something is lacking, thus working at getting something, and the engaged practice of reenacting wholeness in our entire affairs." Do you see that distinction? If we're living from a sense of lacking something, we will always be looking for that something. But if we can live from that sense of wholeness and oneness, we're finding, not seeking. And it's no small thing. This is no small thing. It's not like you just click your heels together 3 times and you're never feeling like something's lacking anymore. If we could do that, that would be truly living the spiritual principles we teach here. But I think it's why we're here. I think we're here to move in that direction. That's why each one of us is here at this particular point in our planet's history. We're here to remember that we're all in this together, that there's a wholeness and a fundamental oneness about everything. And one of the ways that we live that out is in the conversations we have. Margaret Wheatley, in today's quote, she's a scholar of American culture, I guess I would call her, wonderful writer. She said, "Nothing has given me more hope recently than to observe how simple conversations give birth to actions that can change lives and restore our faith in the future." I love that. There's no more powerful way to initiate significant social change than to start a conversation. When a group of people discover they share a common concern, that's when the process of change begins. It reminds me of Margaret Mead, who said, "Never doubt that a small group of dedicated people can change the world. Indeed, they're the only ones who ever have." It's a small group of really passionate people that change things. So there's no more powerful and significant way to instigate change than to begin a conversation. And we've had some very potent conversations coming up in our culture lately. Not too long ago, the conversation was about LGBTQ rights, and it still is. The Black Lives Matter conversation that's risen up is significant. The transgender rights conversation, the indigenous rights and indigenous wisdom conversation, the whole conversation about what it means to be compassionate in this complicated and complex world. And there's one conversation that needs to get louder and more in our face right now, and that is the conversation about what has happened to our planet as a result of our being here. That one's a little too scary for a lot of people, which is why we don't talk about it more. But if we don't have that conversation, pretty soon we won't have anything to talk about, right? So there's a lot of significant and world-changing conversation going on in our culture. But here's what happens to most of us. We go into an important conversation with pre-formed ideas. Here's what I believe, here's what I know, and here's what I'm right about. Yes? Yeah. We suffer from what the philosophers call epistemic closure, which just means our minds are locked down tight at a certain point. Our minds close off to any information that's too radically different from what we believe, that's too far from what we think we know. And it happens to all of us. It happens not just to those who are clearly closed-minded, but even to those who consider themselves to be open-minded. And when things get too far away from our framework, our worldview, we dismiss them. When conversation gets too frightening or too depressing or too destabilizing, we dismiss it because we don't like cognitive dissonance, right? We say that person over there who's giving this opinion is irrational or deluded, trying to destroy what I believe in. And that's what's happening with the climate change conversation. It's frightening, and so it just gets pushed away. And this happens because we don't know how to do cognitive dissonance very well, right? When our worldview is challenged, we close off. And that leads to tribes, groups of people who never talk to one another, the right and the left. In the case of looking at the planet, sometimes the technology buffs and the ecologists and the innovators and the evolutionaries don't talk to each other. Because this group says technology will save us, and this group says it's too late to save us, and this group says there's a way. There's a way. We just need to evolve into it, right? This closing off leads to the divisions that we see all over in our culture. And that's not wholeness. Wholeness is when we understand who we are and stay centered in it and then move out of that little structure. Wholeness is when we have the humanity and the humility to understand that somebody else's worldview, no matter how much we disagree with it, somebody else's worldview, no matter how ignorant or delusional we think it is, to them it's as valid as ours is to us. You have to remember that. Wholeness is when we realize that everybody else is whole too. Everybody else is whole too. The wholeness of all of us is what makes up the wholeness of the universe. I think what we have to learn, which we learn, of course, from our daily spiritual practice, which, of course, is our whole lives, when we pay attention to them. What we have to learn is that everything that happens to us brings a learning opportunity. Everything. An opportunity to learn what the philosophers call epistemic humility. And epistemic humility means we understand that what we don't know is bigger than what we do. There's more we don't know than there is what we know. And sometimes what we don't know is the most important part. What we don't know is bigger and more important than what we do know. If we remember that, we stay open to learning all the time. It's really hard to swallow, though. It's really hard. I mean, my sisters call me the walking dictionary because I know lots of little stupid little facts, like how-tos and weird words and facts, just useless. But I know a lot of them. So for me, I have to say, okay, I know all that stuff and I can sort of rely on it, but what don't I know right now? What don't I know about the situation I'm looking at? We have to be willing to realize that we don't know all the facts all the time. That the things we don't know might be exactly what we need to know in order to move forward. And we have to realize that there are lots of things that individually we don't know how to do. Like, I don't know very often how to tell very well what other people are feeling. I can judge facts and arrange facts and sort facts and put them into but sometimes I can't tell what somebody else is feeling. I don't know how to stand and abide in uncertainty. I want the answer, right? So standing and abiding in uncertainty is something I don't do real well, and so on and so on. I could list about 1 million things. There's a Catholic theologian named Richard Rohr. I'm sure many of you have read him. He's becoming very popular because he's really a true mystic. He's amazing. And he was on, what's the name of that program? Terry Gross, On Being. And he said, he prays for one good humiliation a day. I love that. He prays for one good humiliation a day to challenge his own ego and his epistemic closure. The humiliations are really exercises in humility, not humiliation, but it's like sort of like not getting your way, or having somebody disagree with you, or trumpeting loudly your truth only to find out you're totally wrong. You know, things like that. Listening to your critics to see what's true in what they say, instead of closing off and saying, no, I'm right and you're wrong, which is often what we do. Praying for one good humiliation a day is a way for us to address this fact that we humans, all of us, close parts of our minds off. We close off even when we think we aren't. We put boxes around what we believe and what we know is real, and nothing else can get in. So our spiritual practice is a way to drill some holes in those boxes, so some light and some air and some new information can get in there, right? This deep spiritual recognition that my perspective and your perspective are all true but partial. That's a deep recognition. That lets us turn the mirror on ourselves, right? This is what I can change. And learn from our own lives. And that's what makes us spiritual evolutionaries. Every one of us here. Being willing to see that innately we are whole, and that other people and our planet and our universe, there's wholeness there. There's this pattern, this deep pattern of wholeness, even when all this other stuff is going on. And the wholeness requires us to continually open to it instead of the separation and the division. That's what lets us realize that, we always have more to incorporate, more learning, more wisdom, more information. We have to take in and incorporate science and technology. They are creating and will continue to create technological advances that help us, right? We have to become willing to understand the ways technology is good and the ways it's not, and then decide how we move forward with it. We have to take in information from the ecologists who are there to tell us what's already happening to our planet. Like the fact that Greenland lost 1 billion tons of ice yesterday, in one day. Yeah. We have to be willing to acknowledge the pain of those who are in poverty and will suffer most from climate change and rising sea levels and hurricanes and tornadoes and all that stuff. And the animals that are going extinct at an alarming rate. And this earth, this planet, this amazing living self-healing system that gave rise to us, that we're pushed right to the edge. We have to be willing to let that in and acknowledge it and see our parts in it and not close off just because it's painful. We're spiritual evolutionaries, and so we have to open up to all of that, at the same time doing what we do best, the spiritual part, knowing there is a deep order to the universe. There is a pattern of wholeness and oneness that underlies everything. So when we come from that wholeness and we try to see it in everybody else, in every other life, in everything, regardless of ideas and opinions, and we continue to do our own work of growth, of expansion of consciousness, of willingness to see ourselves and our own egos and to take in new information, we are consciousness itself expanding. And as consciousness itself expanding, we're able to see what it is about this planet that's to be deeply revered and respected and defended in the sacredness and sensitivity of our Mother Earth. We, as consciousness expanding, are also able to see what's to be revered and held in gratitude about the dynamic creativity of reason and science and technology and the good that it can do. It's ours as consciousness itself expanding to just be awake, to be aware of the wholeness, to be aware of the sacredness of every place we put our feet, and to awaken more and more to those things, and to listen and open and allow what others say to penetrate our consciousness, our preconceptions, and create a little cognitive dissonance. And then expand our consciousness so that what's dissonant becomes harmonious. It's the only way to do it is simply to enlarge our consciousness so it's big enough to hold those dissonances and reharmonize them. It's ours to initiate conversations based on the consciousness that our views are important and real and true, but incomplete. To remember that those we're talking with are as whole as we are. And to know that we're deeply, deeply, deeply in this together.